Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in on the latest episode of Study with Swanson. Today we're going to be working with dividing decimals. Before we go into adding decimals, let's just take a step back to review some division terms and long division procedures. Here we have the problem 24 divided by 6 equals 4. The number 24 is what we call the dividend. That's the number that's being divided or broken up into parts. To help me remember that the 24 goes inside of what I'm going to call my box, I like to say the problem right, 24 divided by 6. 6 is my divisor, the number that's being used to divide into my dividend. Finally, we get the answer of 4, and division answers are called quotients. Here's a visual showing where all those vocabulary words go, if this is something that would be useful to you to copy down. The steps for doing long division can be confusing. About a year ago, I found a video of some students from LaCour Christian Academy in Jacksonville, Florida that came up with this little rap. So I'm going to try it out for you and see if this helps you remember the steps as well as it helps me. Divide, multiply, and subtract. Bring it on down and bring it on back. Okay, divide, multiply, and subtract. Bring it on down and bring it on back. Lego! Let's take this problem and turn it into a long division problem. So to set this up, I'm going to put my 2.064 divided by 0.24. The important rule to remember here is that there will be no decimals in our divisor. To get rid of the decimal here, we simply are going to move it to the end of our problem, which was 1, 2 times. And then we need to do the same thing with our dividend. Move it once, twice. So now our problem becomes 206.4 divided by 24. And you can erase this other mess. So our first step here is to divide. So to ask ourselves, does 24 go into 2? No. 20? Still no. So we take it over to 206. How many times does 24 go into 206? A good tool to use here would be a multiplication chart to follow along the 24 line until you get to a number close to 206. I know that this is going to be an 8 up here, so I did my first step, which was divide. Now I have to multiply. I'm multiplying 8 times 24, and I get 192, which I write right here. My third step, subtract. I'm going to subtract the two numbers to get 14. Next, I bring it on down. I bring the next number down to get 144. Then bring it on back to the beginning of the direction. So we start again with the first step, which was divide. So I ask myself, how many times can 24 go into 144? And using a multiplication chart, I know the answer to that is 6. Again, multiply 6 times 24, I get 144, subtract, and we get 0. This is how we know we're at the end of our problem. Now we need to talk about decimal placement. You look back to your original problem, find where the decimal was, so right here, and just put it directly above that. Let's talk through a scenario when we don't get a remainder of 0. Here we have 21 divided by 5. Looking at our steps here on the side, we know the first step is to divide. So 5 doesn't go into 2. Does it go into 21? How many times? 4. Then we multiply. 5 times 4 is 20. Subtract, we get a remainder of 1. Our next step here is to annex a 0. Annex is just a fancy word for add. And I'm going to annex my 0 after the number 21. First, I'm going to put my decimal, so I remember there's a decimal there. Add my 0, and then go to my last step here, which is bring it on down. So I bring that 0 down. Back to the top with our steps, we know 5 goes into 10 2 times. And then 5 times 2 is 10. We subtract and finally get 0 down here for our answer. Don't forget to go back up to the top and put our decimal directly above where it was in our problem. You can continue to annex as many zeros as you need as long as it's after the decimal point. Here are some problems to try on your own. Key points from this lesson are that we don't have any decimals in our divisor. There should be no remainders, so we need to annex zeros to keep the problem going. And lastly, we need to place our decimal point in the quotient above the decimal point in the dividend. Thanks for studying with Swanson.